Welcome to Austin Stories. Today, OP's landlord is not who he thought he was as he tries to scam him and rip him off, but OP has a secret plan for ultimate revenge and it goes better than he'd hoped. Also, all my videos are in podcast form. Check out the Austin Stories podcast on your local provider or check out the link I'll provide you in the description. Here we go. Calculating Landlord, Petty Tenant, posted by Skeptic Man. This happened in 2011, so most of it's from my memory. I was renting a condo unit in a very nice neighborhood. The landlord, whom I will call John, was very nice. I didn't know his day job, just that he was in the finance domain. This unit was his investment home. I leased the condo for a year, from May 2010 to April 2011. John would come to collect rent on the first of every month. He preferred cash, and I had no issues paying him in cash. He never bothered me at any other time. Once I had a plumbing issue, I called him and he promptly sent a plumber to fix it. Basically, our relationship was amicable. In January 2011, my company wanted me to move to another location in a neighboring state. I'm into IT and needed to guide a project team that was to start in March. I negotiated with my manager to move around the end of April after my current lease expired. I informed John that I will not renew the lease, and he was cool with it. In February, a mutual friend, I'll call him Peter, came by my house and immediately fell in love with the neighborhood. He asked me if I knew of any condos that were available for rent. I told him that I was planning to vacate by the end of April, and if he was interested, I could talk to my landlord for him. I also gave him John's number. That evening, I called up John and told him that my friend is interested in renting the unit and can rent it from May 2011. I also gave him Peter's number to communicate directly. John thanked me, and that was that. Around the first week of March, my wife's cousin's marriage got finalized. The wedding date was the 7th of April. We're from India, and marriages are a big thing where all the family and the relatives get together for several days. There was no way in heck that my wife would miss it. We decided that she would travel to India with my 4-year-old son. I would go to the new office location, and by the time they come back from India, sometime in May, I would have everything set up in the new place. We booked the flight tickets for my wife and son, and their flight was a few 4 or 5 days before the wedding. When my manager came to know that I will be alone after April 2nd, he pushed me to join the new office on April 3rd. Those days, working remotely was not considered efficient. But I wanted a few days to pack as I was moving to another state. I booked a mover to come on April 11th. With all things taken care of from my side, I informed John around the middle of March that I was planning to release the condo on April 11th. John thanked me, and that was that. I called Peter and told him that I would be leaving earlier in April. By then, John had discussed the rent with him and they had both signed the lease agreement. Peter was to move in on the 1st of May 2011. Since I'll be gone starting April 11th, Peter asked me if he could move in from April 15th instead. I didn't have any objections. I asked him to inform John. Peter checked with John, and John agreed over the phone. Peter called back and updated me. I never thought of asking Peter for half the rent. I knew he would be paying rent for the whole month for his old apartment, and my apartment would be vacant anyway. On April 1st, John called and collected the rent in the evening. He asked me how things were going and if I needed any help. I thanked him and declined his help. I asked if he could come by in the evening after 6 p.m. of the 11th for an inspection and to collect the keys. I was impressed with John for offering help and thought him to be a decent guy. Little did I know that he had ulterior motives. He was making sure that I was leaving by the 11th. After collecting the rent, he went home and called up Peter. He wanted to adjust the lease dates to start the lease on April 15th. John was sly enough to wait till he got the rent from me and then wanted to collect the rent again from Peter. Peter signed it, but did not tell me until a few days later. When I heard this, I was livid. I asked Peter, "When did you sign the new lease?" As I suspected, John had called Peter the night of April 1st after collecting the rent from me. They signed the new lease the next day, April 2nd. I called John and asked him to pay me back the rent for the half of the month, as he was already charging it from Peter. He said, "No can do. You have signed the lease until the end of the month." I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember his exact words now. I was mad, but he had a point. And with so many things to take care of during the move, on top of the hectic work schedule at the time, I couldn't even think that I had the time to take any action against him. Normally, I'm not a vengeful guy, but I wanted John to pay, and not necessarily monetarily. I stewed over it for a day or two, and suddenly an idea came to my mind, and I thought of giving it a shot. I waited until the 10th, and on the evening of April 10th, I called John and told him that he need not come for the inspection the next evening, as I had changed my plans. I will be moving out on the 28th of April instead. John became quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, But you were planning to move out tomorrow." He was stammering. I said, "Yes, but I have the lease until the end of the month, so I'm planning to take it slow." It was a taste of the same bitter medicine that he gave me. Then I nicely said, "Good night," and disconnected the call. I don't know what was going on in John's mind, but he must have been pretty scared about the lease that he had signed with Peter. As per the lease, Peter had a right to move in from April 15th, but I had already paid for the whole month, and I'm within my rights to stay until the end of the month. If I didn't vacate, Peter could take him to court. The next morning, the day of the move, John called me on the dot at 7 a.m. He asked me if I would consider moving sooner if he paid me part of the rent. I said yes. The poor guy materialized in a minute. It turns out he was waiting outside in his car to meet me if I agreed. John handed me an envelope. I counted the money and I was a little confused. There was $800 in it. My monthly rent at that time was $1,250, and I would have settled for $625 or less. This was early in the morning, and I was thinking of the movers and the 100 other things that needed to be taken care of that day. I was not prepared to interact with John, and we did not even talk about money the previous night. I did not expect him to come over with the money, and that too, so suddenly. I started feeling sorry for the poor guy and was thinking of returning him the extra $175, but he spoke too soon. He wanted to know, in a demanding voice, if I was going to vacate the condo that evening as I had previously communicated. I realized that he did not deserve my compassion. I wanted to spite him and tell him, no can do, but I did not escalate it and said, yes, come in the evening for inspection. The whole day was hectic, but the movers cleared up the house promptly. I had a few other things to take care of and a few things to donate. The evening comes and John was there exactly at 6 p.m. He did not inspect anything. He collected the keys, handed me a check returning the full amount of the security deposit I gave at the beginning of the lease signing, and he went away. No thank you or goodbye. It felt a bit weird, but there were 800 reasons to ignore that feeling. I was a bit puzzled about why he gave me $800 instead of $625. I calculated later and assumed that he paid me back for 19 days that I would not be on the property, which comes to $792. A couple important comments by KBBBNZ. He would have given slightly extra to ensure that you didn't push back on staying, I think. Good work. Such a shame when good landlords get greedy. Yeah, that's a daggone shame because he saw those dollar signs and he just kept pushing harder and harder. And this comment, interestingly here, Coder Joe 1 says, lucky he didn't demand a certified letter to announce that you weren't renewing your lease. I wonder if this would have come back to bite OP in the butt, but it did not because the landlord just saw those dollar signs in his eyes and did not think clearly through this at all. Now, this is a nice revenge because Landlord owns this whole situation. He thinks in his head, he's like, all right, I'm going to try to double dip, take advantage of these two guys here who happen to be friends. Hello here. And then it's like, oh, OP is actually in on this plan now. He knows. So he's going to switch up the dates, throw John for a loop. Peter's going to still be able to get in time. And all this while, John's like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Well, he finally has that answer. $800 later, and OP gets more than he bargained for. Isn't that just, I just want you to think about a situation when you have a bad situation in your hands, and then it turns into something great, better than you thought it would be. I mean, if you were OP, how would have you dealt with this situation? You sneak around and nail John exactly right where it hurts. Which happens to be his wallet. Way to go, OP. Let me know what you think in the comments, by the way. Entitled Karen tries to steal my stuff to give to her kids that she can't discipline or control. You've got to hear this crazy story. Click on the video on the screen so you do not miss this fallout, and I will see you there.